I think the rules are unwritten, and that's what's appealing to us about this space, is that we can decide what it means to be a part of a DAO, what it means to contribute, to be participants, to be a part of building it together. And for me, that's what attracted me to this space. Like, how do you build a community that has aligned incentives, that has a flywheel effect, that feels invested in the success and failures of the community? All of that is incredibly powerful. And how do you wield that and use that to bolster something bigger than you could ever create independently just in yourself?
Hello, everyone. Today, I'm super thrilled to have a conversation with Natasha Hoskins, a startup builder with a strong focus on community and the co-founder of Boys Club. Boys Club is an exciting social DAO and media company that is pioneering a fresh voice for the new internet. And during our conversation, we'll delve into Natasha's background and her journey into the space, exploring her experiences and insights. We will also explore the vision behind Boys Club and its current projects, as well as their unique approach to DAOs, curation, and the exploration of Web3 as a transformative media experience. Hey, Natasha, welcome to this episode of NEWFORUM.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. So happy to be here.
Amazing. So my favorite question is, tell us about your background and how you got involved in Web3, and perhaps you can follow up with what motivated you to co-found Boys Club.
Yeah, for sure. So my background has always been in early stage startups, really a 0 to 1 for many of them, always sort of working in brand and community and thinking about sort of validation of early products and ideas, and really enjoying building a product, getting a community together around it and seeing sort of where there's fit. So started my career at a company called Indiegogo, which is a crowdfunding platform. Worked there for several years working with entrepreneurs and early stage builders, and then left that startup to start my own thing in a totally different vertical than crypto, in travel, and really learned a ton, obviously, from that experience. But one of the things that came out of that for me was really an understanding that there's sort of a few different ways to approach building a company and building a startup. One is, you start with an idea and then you go out, you build that idea and you bring a community around it. And then another approach is really thinking about how do you start from a community first perspective? How do you get people in the room excited about something? And then from there, decide where there's opportunities to build, to create, and to launch products. So that's sort of my background. How I got into Web3 is through Boys Club, and that's a whole other world that we can get into. But always a brand community, startup person, 0 to 1, and really enjoyed early stage validation and building.
Fantastic. I would say Boys Club made such an impact on me. It was the first, when I was exploring and trying to understand what DAOs are, it was one of those that was kind of like that template, that example for me. And it was like a success story for me in Web3. I also noticed on your Twitter, you had pinned this tweet. It says it's a DAO, but like a social DAO, because it's also about friendship and parties, but also where we build shit together. But it's not about being a woman, but we are centering femme and non-binary voices, and we share in the upside designing the Web3 feature we want. And actually, this was August 2022, and I'm super curious to know, will you define Boys Club the same?
Yeah. That's interesting. Always having your pinned tweet read is always exposing.
Yes.
But I would say it's very similar. I mean, there's definitely, Boys Club has evolved a lot over the course, I guess, almost not quite a year, but that was at the end of the summer of last year, or, at the beginning of the summer now. And yeah, it's evolved a lot since then. I think the core idea is similar. We would define Boys Club today as a social collective bringing new voices to the new internet. And that's a lot of what we do. And the work that we do is, how do we see all of this emerging tech that's happening, and our stack and what we're born from and what we originated from is crypto and Web3 and DAOs and things like that. But we're also interested and see our community interested in all these other areas of emerging technology, digital ownership and AI and VR and all of these sort of things that are happening and how it affects our daily lives and fashion and art and music and our work and our social lives. And that's always been sort of the vantage point of Boys Club, is like, how are we looking at those things and looking at that emerging tech and how it affects culture in an unapologetically female voice and lens that has a sense of humor and doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's sort of baked into that tweet as well, with sort of the format of it. So I would say there's things that are very similar. I think the details of it have evolved and the ways that we approach that work has definitely evolved. But the heart behind how do we be a part and be participants in emerging tech and shaping culture is definitely what we're most focused on.
Amazing. I want to talk a bit about, because you talked a lot about community and you have like a massive online presence. So there's a quote by Rafa, and it says, healthy communities support members in developing their identity instead of subsuming it. And so I'm curious to know, like, how do you think belonging to a specific online community, and in this case, Boys Club, help a person or an individual build their identity and relevance?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think one of the things that has been really special about Boys Club and what I find really inspiring, even for myself personally, in being a part of Boys Club, is that one of the things that sort of felt missing when I started to get into the space was the idea or the reality that you could show up as your full self in this environment, in this vertical, in crypto in general. And my full self is super interested in all of the stuff that's happening around crypto and Web3 and DAOs and NFTs and blockchain technology and all of that stuff. But it's also super into skincare and pop culture and a lot of other stuff that is a part of who I am as a person. And being able to show up in all of those areas and as my full self in a community, in an industry, in a vertical, I think is vitally important to people bringing their best selves and their best work to that industry. And so coming back to your original question, I think Boys Club has been that for many people, a safe place to be their full selves and to explore all of these different areas of the new internet with all of the things that they are as a person. And I think that's when community is most powerful, is when people have that sense of belonging and can really bring their best work because they're showing up fully in that work. So yeah, that's been a really, really special part of building Boys Club and seeing that in our members and our community.
In your opinion, what are some of the key advantages and opportunities that Web3 and DAOs bring to creators and brands in terms of engaging with your communities? What proofs of contributions are meaningful in the Boys Club community? Example, with participation, events, and proposals like art, etc. And this is a bit of a heavy question, so I'll continue. Like, in light of this, I'm curious to know, what could proof of creativity mean in your context, and how valuable will it be to have your identity on chain that you can take with you wherever you go or you show up?
Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. I think so. We've been very thoughtful around how we approach DAO and sort of what that looks like for us. I think the rules are unwritten, and that's what's appealing to us about this space, is that we can decide what it means to be a part of a DAO, what it means to contribute, to be participants, to be a part of building it together. And for me, that's what attracted me to this space. Like, how do you build a community that has aligned incentives, that has a flywheel effect, that feels invested in the success and failures of the community? All of that is incredibly powerful. And how do you wield that and use that to bolster something bigger than you could ever create independently just in yourself? But again, because the rules are unwritten, you're figuring that out with absolutely zero handbook to do it. And so there's a lot of things that are really difficult about it that you're testing and iterating, and allowing for that flexibility, I think, is really important, and allowing for people to try things and maybe it works or maybe it doesn't, or for your opinion to shift and change as you are in the work is vitally important to being successful, in my opinion, especially in sort of this nascent stage of DAOs that we're in right now. So thinking about how we've done that at Boys Club is we really we're thoughtful about, one, how do you become a part of Boys Club? It's application gated. It's not token gated. Our Discord is capped at 2,000 members. That's really intentional because we want people, wherever they are in their journey to be able to participate in Boys Club. We want to make sure we're bringing in the right types of people to the community that have, like a vibe check to make sure that we're all sort of a part of designing the future that we want to see similarly. But we didn't want it to be like, you have to have a wallet set up. You have to be, ready in all of these ways, show up in a certain way, because that leaves a lot of people out of the conversation. So that was one intentional decision. The next is really around contribution and participation, as you're speaking to. So we had the first season of the DAO where we were working on validating a minimum viable community is really the work that we started to kick off, and really approaching the work from an early stage startup sort of perspective of how do we get to validation quickly? How do we make sure we're not building out a ton of processes and tooling and integrations that are sort of cart before the whole horse in terms of figuring out where are people actually interested in being a part of this? Where do they want to contribute? How do we need to track that? What needs to be on chain? What doesn't? And allowing just a ton of flexibility in that. So you can think of Boys Club as like a bunch of concentric circles. So there's like the audience, which is boundless, community, which is really about 2,000 members. And then there's the DAO, which is in the center. And the DAO is a much smaller group. It's actually contribution gated. So coming all the way back to your initial question, to be able to vote on how we're spending the treasury, to be able to be a part of the DAO of Boys Club, it's by contribution. So we really like that model for many reasons, one of which is you can have say over what Boys Club looks like in the world if you have some skin in the game and you're a part of making Boys Club a reality. And that feels like a really important tension for people to hold. And then secondly, that means it's open to anyone. It's not about some, financial gating, some token that you purchase in order to be a part of Boys Club. It's really about, your time and attention and your care being put into the community. And we're in an interesting moment right now for Boys Club where we're going from season 1 to season 2. We did a big restructuring of our guilds. There's a blog post that's coming out that the DAO ops team has been working on that's really thoughtful sort of documentation around those changes and what we've done to be most efficient, the pain points that we had from season 1 and how we've transitioned into season 2. So a lot more I could say there, but I think for us, a big learning has been, how do you make sure in a community, there's always going to be this small nucleus of people who are incredibly engaged, hugely participatory. How do you make sure that those core people are the people that have the loudest voice, the biggest say in the community, because they have the most care for it? And so we've tried to make decisions that feel right for the whole of the community, but also protects that core group having the loudest voice in decisions we're making.
That's solid. I love it. And yeah, I really love it. And I think I want to be part of my club.
Come on down. Come on down.
I'm so sold, and I love it because I'm so big on what inclusivity, accessibility means in Web3. And, we've got all these amazing DAOs and whatnot, and they're totally token gated and it's super hard to get through. So I think I really appreciate or admire your approach. I am still curious to know, how do you approach curation? What's the criteria? Because I'm sure it is open to everyone, but if someone was watching and then they're like, oh, I love Boys Club, it's open to everyone. Yeah, I'm gonna go apply, but just to kind of explain a little bit, the curational thought and the criteria, aspect of it.
Yeah, so anybody can apply. Just go to boysclub.vip, and at the bottom there's a little join button and you can apply there. And there is a very thoughtful process that happens with the membership guilds. So they look at every single application. I think there's 3 or 4 people that review every single application. The application just went through a little bit of a facelift, which to encompass sort of more emerging tech and interest access points that people have. But really what we're looking for is, are people looking at this community as a community that they can come in and provide value? I think we've always had the lens of, how are we always providing value back to the community and not extracting value? So that's really what we're looking for in applications. People who want to participate and build with like-minded people, but are also thinking about what am I going to bring to this community? How can I show up and provide whatever it is that you're into and that you feel good at, or you're excited about? How are you making sure that it's additive and not extractive? So that's the main point. Yeah, and just looking for people who have a shared sense of humor and can be super chill about stuff. And like, it's a really good vibe and we want to protect that. And that's why we've been really intentional at capping it at 2,000. There's definitely a whole other strategy that you can have around Discord where you put the Discord link everywhere. You're trying to get, 10, 20, 30,000 people into Discord and building up these huge communities. But those communities feel quite empty. It's easy to show up and feel completely anonymous and not really know anybody. And so we've been really intentional about having a different approach, really to come back to what we had talked about earlier, that you show up and you have a sense of belonging. You feel like you know people in the community. You can be like, oh, I know that that's Amani, or I know that that's Jill, or I know that that person works at Coinbase, or I know that that person is, thinking about NFTs and IRL activations. Like there's a sense of knowing each other that I think is really important and has really carried us through the bear market, because there's a true sense of friendship and knowing each other. And when that's been a huge part of Boys Club and the real upside to keeping it sort of intimate and smaller.
That's wonderful. I was also thinking that because you are doing quite a lot. There's the podcast that you've got events.
Yeah, you got it.
And actually, I love I think the latest, I don't know if it's like a new thing you have going. The first one was, I think you posted something on June 9th. Bullshit machines.
Oh, yeah, that's our bullshit machine. Yeah.
And something about Feelings First podcast series about AI. And I'm curious to follow that. But not to go off topic a bit, but I'd love to know like what inspired it before I kind of jump into my question, which was about like, how do you kind of juggle everything with the team, coordinating, and what are some of the challenges and how do you navigate it?
Yeah, so Bullshit Machines is our AI podcast, really designed to be accessible intel on AI and a way for people to access, again, this emerging technology. And it really came out of our community and seeing that, oh, wow, all of these people who joined Boys Club are super into crypto, super into Web3, like totally. But they're also people who are like trend spotters and really obsessed with what is emerging. And that could be anywhere from like what's emerging in skincare and on the cutting edge of that to what's emerging in technology and what's sort of the rhetoric that's happening in tech more generally. And there was just so much conversation naturally around AI and all the innovation that's happening there. For us, for Dina and myself, the other co-founder of Boys Club, we had really somewhat successfully been able to be translators for people around what was happening in crypto. And, when we launched in November of 2021, so much of what we were trying to do is show people, okay, there's this thing that's happening on the internet. And what does it mean for me as a school teacher or a florist or someone who does work in tech or someone who does work in crypto? Like, how does it affect my life? What does it mean for me? And where can I go from maybe someone who's on the sideline to someone who's a participant? And that was really a huge motivation of why we started Boys Club and the work when we first got started. And so with all of this happening in AI and all of these conversations happening within our community, it felt like another very natural point for us to say, okay, how can we take what's happening and do the work of translation and make this accessible for anybody to understand what was happening? And so that's the concept of Bullshit Machine. It's going to be a 6 to 7 episode series that we're doing. It's on YouTube right now, the first episode, and we're going to be continuing to add episodes there. So it's a lot of fun. It's very much like the first episode is called AI for Idiots by Idiots. Like it's very much like, come on in, learn together. Let's learn in community and figure out what this means for us collectively. So that's what we're doing there. And then to answer the second part of your question around balancing all of it, it's an active question that I ask myself every day if I'm doing the right work and if I'm prioritizing the right things. There are so many amazing opportunities for Boys Club, which is I feel so honored to be able to do this work and be a part of this community and figure out what the best path for it is. I think there has been a lot of questions for us internally around where is the business of Boys Club? Where is there sustainable reoccurring revenue to keep this community thriving and keep it alive and also maximize the opportunity that is in front of all of us? And so a lot of the work is sort of looking for opportunities and seeing what the right thing to invest our time and attention into. And I would say we have the most incredible team of people that are guild leaders and founding members and incredibly smart people who are thinking about so much of what we're doing, from our grants program to like a trend spotting, like beta product. Like there's a world that's sort of existing in and around Boys Club. And I think for me personally, it's where are the areas within Boys Club that I feel most important to shape in terms of how it shows up in the world from a brand perspective. Where are the areas where I think there's the most opportunity that I want to personally be involved in and feel a calling or a sense of ownership over. But yeah, it's definitely an active question every day around like, are we doing the right work? Are we putting our time and attention into the right things? Which I think a lot of people feel in their daily lives, and especially around sort of the future of work. And as people are starting to make more and more decisions personally around the things that they want to spend their time on and the career that they want to develop, how do you make sure that you're investing in the right areas there? So yeah, it's a ongoing open question that I think I'll be asking for many years.
It really sounds like you have such a strong team, and that's sort of like the cornerstone, a foundation of the success of Boys Club. And I think it's really important, and it's nice that this is something that you're passionate about, community, right? And you managed to create that atmosphere, that safe space for the members, for the co-founders, yourself and the other co-founder to thrive, right? And it's quite admirable. And so I really believe that you're on the perfect path, because
thank you. That's encouraging.
And if you have the right community and such a supportive, like how you explain it, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, there's nothing like, there's a saying, and my mom is from Ghana in West Africa, and there's a saying, I don't know, I'm going to try to translate it in English, but it says like, I don't know if you have this concept of a broom, like a broom for sweeping. When you take one out, you can easily break it, but when you have the bunch, it's harder. Break. So that's how I see it, and that
absolutely
into my mind. So I'm also curious to know, like, what is like a impactful collaboration that Boys Club has facilitated, maybe between creators, brands, or communities that you particularly enjoyed? I'm sure you enjoyed every one of it, but one in particular that you'd say maybe Web3 enabled such a unique collaboration or partnership to happen.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I would say one that I feel really proud of and feels like a really a personification of a DAO is the Zine that we launched in March. So we did a Zine in March that was both a digital and physical Zine, as well as having had a live mint that went along with it. And that was something that really came out of the DAO organically, and then through like blood, sweat, and tears and hard work, like came to life with like a whole group of people really coming around it and surrounding the project and bringing their expertise and their passion into making that reality. So that came out initially as just like a proposal that came through the DAO from a woman named Noah, who is a longtime photographer in New York, and she's been a part of the community for a while. And she originally submitted this idea for what was going to be like a yearbook for Boys Club. Like, how do we have sort of like an encapsulation of this moment in time for our community and the members and the people who are here? And then quickly that sort of evolved from there of like, what does like a new internet magazine look like? Like if Vogue were to start their magazine today, like what would be some of the things that they're thinking about and talking about? What would be the on-chain components that existed within it? Where would there be sort of like digital treasures throughout it? What would they be talking about? Who would they be interviewing? It just kind of grew from there to a team that was so talented and thoughtful about the way that they were approaching it. We were able to bring in some really amazing partners who were a part of that project and sponsored the Zine. And so I felt like it was this really amazing, a magazine in general or a Zine in general is this like amazing, personification of a DAO, because you have all of these different contributors coming together around a shared voice or a shared topic and creating something that feels like cohesive and thoughtful, but has a distinct set of contributors who are putting their voice into this thing. And so that was a lot of fun and a lot of work, and really, I think, showed what can come out of a DAO in an interesting way that sort of touched media and touched all of these other areas of attention that we're interested in thinking about and talking about. So yeah, that would be a project I'm really proud of, and I feel really proud of the team that got behind it, because it's just really absolutely could not have happened without every single one of those people participating in what it looked like.
I checked it out a bit, but I'm gonna look deeper.
Yeah, it's just zine.boysclub.vip if anybody wants to check out the digital version of the site.
Amazing. So what if you had to give an advice or some sort of advice to aspiring creators or entrepreneurs looking to enter into Web3, maybe Web3 media space, or also like to explore the potential of DAOs? Are there any particular skills or mindset that you believe they should have or is essential for success?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think just approaching it with like a real spirit of experimentation. This industry and DAOs and all of this, like, yes, crypto's been around for a long time, but cultural creation around crypto is so new. We're like at the very, very beginning of what that means, what that looks like, how it's going to show up in the world, what compensation is going to look like around that, what monetization strategies are going to look like, what sort of new forms of content we're going to see. And it's unknown, like what that's going to become. So I think showing up to the work with like a real spirit of experimentation and a real open hand around how something can evolve and develop, I think is really, really important. And I think having, for me personally with Boys Club, what's been really important is having a very distinct and defined voice and approaching it from sort of a brand first perspective. That's very unique to Boys Club. It's very unique to us, but I would encourage people who are thinking about producing work and producing creative output to have some sense of identity around what they want their brand to be, whether it be a personal brand or a brand independent of their own personal, creative output. And I think that really sets you apart in this space. I think a lot of people have forgotten about that or haven't spent a lot of time and attention on brand. And so for me, that's been what I love and what I feel can bring to this industry. So that's my unique perspective. But that would be my sort of 2 cents for creators and people who are thinking about this space and wanting to do work in it, is approach the work with a spirit of experimentation and try to think about how your brand shows up and is distinct to other things that are happening in this space. Oh, and one last thing I'll say is I think a lot of people in this industry, we can be talking to the same like 1,000 people in the room. Like there's like, it is really small at this point. And a lot of people who are thinking about new media and on-chain media, it's a lot of the same people in the room. And I would be really, really encouraging of people to think about how is the work that you're doing bringing fresh voices and fresh people into this industry, whether it be accessibility around the way you engage with that thing if it's on chain, whether it be the content itself being expansive and being accessible and fun and interesting to people who are not into crypto. I think if you're trying to start a new project right now in this market, it's super, super important that you think about how it's going out into the world and bringing in people into this industry and making it interesting for them.
Yeah, that's a solid point. I interviewed Natasha. I think.
I love Natasha. She's the best.
Yeah,
it doesn't get better than Natasha. She's amazing.
And she said something. I asked her. I was like, "Would you refer to yourself as a Web3, like an NFT?" A music artist, and she said she's been doing music before like Web3, and so she sees it more as a tool. And
totally.
So it's like you could be an artist, you're a musician, but see it as you're exploring these new tools. And I found that really interesting because it's easier for, let's say, a musician who has no idea what Web3 is to approach it, like, because if I'm going to be called an, let's say, an NFT Web3 music artist, it perhaps sounds a bit strange to me. But if I'm told like there's this pretty incredible tools that you can explore, maybe that's the way I will be onboarded, or some musician will be onboarded. So I think what you said is super, super important, how we make things accessible depending on the community that we're, I guess, communicating to or trying to onboard into this space.
I think it's about like viewing so much of what the tooling we have as enablements. Like, how are they enabling what you're great at and what you love to do and the work that you want to produce? I think the same goes for AI. Like, how are all of these things tools in your toolkit and not the thing that is everything that the content is about? So and I love that's so much of Natasha's approach, and I think that's what makes her so successful and so much of a powerhouse in this industry, is because she's thoughtful about how these things amplify and make her work better, and not just being obsessed with the tech for tech's sake.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Natasha, I want to know what keeps you going in Web3 in the space.
I have a lot of fun doing the work that I'm doing. I really enjoy it. I think for a entrepreneur, being in Web3 is sort of like, you sort of have the adrenaline rush when you are an entrepreneur of like, is this thing going to work? And like, there's so much of your work every day that's like, what could happen? And you're constantly building, you're like running up a hill. And I think that's majorly amplified in Web3 and in tech, and in the moment in tech that we're living in, when technology is expanding and like accelerating at such an insane speed. And every day there's new possibilities and new tools. And that is really fun and keeps the work really interesting. And so, yeah, I think what keeps me going is sort of that effect of like, oh my gosh, there's always something new to sort of inform your work and to keep things fun and interesting. And I also think like days where I'm feeling really discouraged and really down and really unsure of myself and of Boys Club and of what the future holds for us in this community, I'm just truly like uplifted by the members of Boys Club and the community that we have. And there's been many days where I've been like, man, I'm just like not sure that like I'm doing the right thing, or that Boys Club is on the right path, or I've made the right decisions as one of the co-founders. And the community is so supportive. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about building in public, is being able to be vulnerable with our community and say, hey, these are some of the things that we're really wondering about, or we really feel unsure of. Like, what do you guys think? And having really thoughtful, meaningful feedback come back, but also just having a community that's so supportive and encouraging and really wanting to see us all sort of win and succeed. And so that's definitely been there for me some days, just like posting in Discord and being like, off day like anybody else, and seeing that there's people who are really cheering for you makes a huge difference to the day-to-day of the work.
That's awesome. I wanted to say that interviewing people like you, purpose-driven visionaries like yourself, keeps me going.
Oh, that's so kind. That's
really. Yeah, so thank you so much, Natasha. Really honored to chat with you today, and very, very insightful. Thanks for sharing your experiences and being vulnerable, as you said, and very transparent and super informative and educative content, I'd say. And yeah, I'm curious to know, where can our listeners, who I'm sure right after watching this, they're going to try to apply, where can they find you on your social platform?
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. That means a lot here. Yeah, so you can follow us on Twitter. We're Boys Club World. You can check out sort of all of our media outlets, podcasts, newsletter, all of that on our website, boysclub.zip. You can subscribe to the newsletter, and you can check out the different podcasts that we have going. We have 3 amazing podcasts for you all to listen to. And then if you want to join, you can also apply on the website as well. So there's a lot of access points, but Twitter is a great place to keep up to date on all the things happening in the world of Boys Club as a starting point. So I'm so appreciative for you and having me on. And thank you so much for taking the time to have such thoughtful questions.
Thank you so much, Natasha. And thank you everyone who tuned in today to listen to us. And we will have all the links in our description, as well as our links if you want to follow what we are also up to in our community, in the NEWFORUM, New Foundation community. And yeah, thank you all. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.